All right. We should have something to mark these. I don't know. I don't know which number this is, but this is Monday, July 12th, and it's the Eden Open mic. And yeah, so we're still here, and we got a couple people, and I guess we got someone who's going to come on and do a little intro, which is really the inspiration behind this format, was to give people just a chance to introduce themselves. And then it's just kind of an open forum for anybody to kind of bring something up to discuss or a rant or whatever. So yeah, we welcome you. Welcome, Michael. Yeah, I've seen you around too, I feel like.
Yeah, I appreciate the welcome. I don't know if does the video usually work? This is my first. I haven't done a Zoom call in a while.
It should. It's not absolutely necessary for this if you don't want to, but you know, we encourage it, of course.
Yeah, you should have a button bottom left, depending if you got the app.
I think he called in though. You might have called in, Michael, because I'm seeing like a little phone icon for your audio.
Oh yeah, maybe. Yeah.
If you want to leave and come back in and click the video link, but you don't have to. Like I said.
How's it going, Josh? A regular face.
What's up, guys? I was enjoying the banter before you started the recording.
Part of the fam. Well, I know it's pseudo off topic. We'll talk, but Michael, feel free to interrupt us whenever you're back online. To me, this is what Eden's actually about, right? What I'm in crypto for is the social revolution. You know, that's what attracted me to this from the beginning. When I first heard about Bitcoin in 2010, yeah, I went down the rabbit hole in the Fed, money and all that, but I didn't see it as like, I don't see money as money. I saw it as a potential transfer of power or better distribution of power, of which money and wealth is an aspect of power, but it's not everything. So it was interesting, but I think we have Michael. We definitely can see you, my friend. So you just muted yourself.
We're getting to know you really well now.
We're gonna put it on.
Yeah, I got the unmute and I got the video. So, yeah, I appreciate the welcome. Just a little bit of myself. So, it's funny. I've been following EOS for some time, and was interested in it. I followed it through kind of the early stages and really became attracted last year, towards the end of last year, a lot of like what B1 was doing. And then, Dan had left and there was a significant price drop. And I really took the plunge then as far as an investor goes. And then obviously when Dan came back to the EOS community, it really intrigued me. So really been really active since, I would say January. So, but my background's finance. I have a master's degree in finance and I've done some consulting work, and just been involved in budget for the last 20 years in a lot of different capacities. And, really just interested in just the EOS project, a really big believer in crypto and especially blockchain. And I really do believe it's the future. And I think for me, EOS, I just see as one of the best risk reward opportunities that I've really seen investing in a long time. Now, obviously there's a lot of things that need to be done. But as far as the opportunity goes, I'm very bullish on just EOS in general, and just wherever I can try to help, that's what I'm looking to do, and a big believer in what Eden can do moving forward, and just want to help wherever I can.
That's awesome. With your background, and we need business, right? We need commerce. We need to use this thing. I mean, that's really,
right,
to me, that missing element right now. And so more people with backgrounds that can help get some value creation is huge.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the usage, getting the usage and the marketing. I mean, it's obviously having the superior technology is one thing, but if you don't have the users, it's got to be viable and to get those users, to have the marketing and liquidity more than anything else. And I think that's one thing that Eden can bring to the table. And really excited that, and Block One has obviously done some things here over the last 6 months that's shown that they're committed and to working with the blockchain as well. So, we'll see what happens, but it's definitely exciting times, and it's kind of learn as you go. Obviously, it's a process, and I think the biggest thing is what I've seen is just people have to keep that in mind moving forward. Is that you're not going to have the right answer in one day, and just have to be open-minded to that fact. I think the fact that it's been 4 years, especially for Genesis holders. These guys have been involved for so long. Sometimes it can get frustrating, but if they, take a step back and look at the forest, through the trees, so to speak, that there's really is a tremendous opportunity here, and it's just a matter of bringing that liquidity and marketing and utilizing the chain. It's obviously going to get the price to go up, which everyone is looking to have happen.
Yeah. Yeah. With all of that, right? That value creation, just like, it's that positive momentum because it sort of feeds itself, because now there's more there's more attention, of course, whenever a project's growing like that. And then of course there's more funding, for development and all, it's more attractive to everyone. But you were saying something, Chris?
Yeah, I'm just curious, Michael, like you've been looking, obviously, and paying close attention to everything that's been going on with Eden, EOS, and the like. Do you have any sort of suggestions or feedback or anything you noticed that Eden, like, Dom and I are spending a lot of time on this, Joshua is as well. We got John Heater on as well. Like any feedback you could, should we do something different, more of?
Yeah. The one thing I think is just getting as many of the players involved in the process as early as possible. I mean, it came up, with the BPs, obviously Kevin Rose with the Block One has kind of been giving his feedback. As much as you can get the whales input, I mean, sometimes they don't want to be anonymous, so you don't know who they are. But, a lot of times getting people involved in the beginning of the process so there's buy-in. I mean, you're never going to have 100% that everyone's going to be happy. And I think, what's good for EOS and Eden is good for B1 and the BPs and trying to come up with some kind of compromise. Because ultimately, when you bring business to the chain, it's going to benefit everyone. And that's, I think, with Eden has that possibility is getting as many people involved, as stakeholders involved in the process now, while it's still forming and I think that's happening, right? I do think that that's happening. And I'm a big believer too in multiple streams of income. Whether it's inflation, whether it's, small inflation, obviously, but whether it's creating a BP that's getting donated funding. I know, you used to have some reservation about doing that, and that was talked about in the last podcast. So I don't want to get into that, but the point is that the more streams of funding that you have, the better off that EOS is going to be. And obviously Block One stepping up and matching, because again, what's good for EOS is good for B1. I mean, they own 100 million EOS. So, for every dollar in price, they're increasing EOS is increasing by $100 million. I mean, if you look at Ethereum's market cap at the height, it was $475 billion. So you have EOS, if EOS would get to that market cap, you're talking $4 billion to EOS and to Block One as far as their ownership. So they're vested in EOS's success. So, it benefits everyone to bring activity and funding and liquidity to the chain. And it's just a matter of getting a system to do that. And I think that's the direction that we're heading.
Yeah, no, definitely. And, it's going to be this stuff. I mean, at first I was a little frustrated with some of the pushback because it felt like people got their guns and shot right away rather than just asking some questions. And it was even clear,
Right.
like people didn't even read the forum post to get some background. And I just was like, I don't think there's any reason. I don't think I've given anyone in this community a reason to feel that I would like just go out of my way and speak on behalf of the community in such a profound and intense manner by being like, I'm starting up the Eden-based block producer, and this speaks for Eden, you know, and means, you know, like,
well,
come on, guys, give me the benefit of the doubt. Like, you know, I'm busting my
No,
ass here for this thing.
I think one of the things is when I talked to Chris about this is that Telegram is not nuanced at all, and I think you know, it's very hard. It's very easy to get into a back and forth in necessarily negative way because it's hard to explain how you feel. You know, it's a lot easier on these type of calls. I think for the most part, everyone that's in that Telegram, you know, a vast majority anyway, are looking to benefit EOS, and everyone kind of has their own different ideas, and there's pros and cons. But I think, you know, the thing for everyone is just kind of take a step back and try not to take it personally, which is obviously hard to do, and that's. I think that's the one thing that everyone involved has to, you know, this is a process, understand that, and it's okay to question, you know, as long as you're doing it legitimately. Now, I do think there's some people, to be frank, that just fight just to fight, you know, and that, you know, they're still back ICO from 4 years ago where, look, that you can't, you know, you can't change the past. You can only look forward to the future. It's a sunk cost. Now, there's those people you're not going to be able to talk with, or that's just the way they're going to feel for you know, forever. So, but I think the vast majority of people are trying to put their best foot forward and look, hey, what is the best way moving forward? So I think if everyone just has to take their feelings back and just understand that. And I think having these Zoom calls and doing this mock election is great because it's a lot easier to get that in a Zoom call where you can see people and relate, as opposed to you know, you have these people that don't necessarily exist, or, you know, there's a icon or an avatar. You don't even know who they are or, you know, anything about them. And it's hard to get a feel for where they're coming from. Where Eden, I love having the video personally, and I think it's a good thing because it gets people on the record and you're dealing with people. And I think that's great. And will really raise the cream to the top as far as ideas and moving EOS and Eden forward.
Well, it's an accountability thing too, right? I mean, in an anonymous internet forum of any kind, everybody's, you know, 7 feet tall and, you know, 600 pounds and, you know, tough as nails. But I just reversed it. You know, I was taking it a little personally at first. And then I just said, you know, I need to do the same thing I'm asking for here, which is assume that everybody who's talking to me that I'm potentially perceiving as either criticism or possibly even a question of my motive or character, and just do the same thing. Just say, no, that's not what's happening here. They care. They care enough to talk about it. That's good, right? That's a good thing. It's a good thing that Eves is coming on and going, guys, you know, I have certain relationships and I'm not sure how this might be perceived. That's good. I'm glad we have him. You know, like, we could be in the dark here if you don't have anybody in your community with connections with, you know, all these parties like you're talking about. We want to get everybody to the table. And the other feedback I've gotten, actually, because I've been doing a lot of reaching out, and that's what Eve's comments motivated me to do, is to go, all right, well, I do have some of a network, and even like just did some kind of like cold calling, if you will, to some contacts. But like, I spoke with someone from New Dex today, and they love it. You know, they're the #1 ranked VP right now out of all of us. And they're very, you know, say bullish on Eden, if you will, very positive, very supportive. This is someone that I actually invited, who approached me for an invitation. His name's Neil. He's a member. You know, and so we just had a good conversation, but, you know, I got his feedback and everything. And he said, yeah, and, you know, we're going to vote for you. But we want to see Block 1 kind of lead the way on this. So if they vote, we'll kind of follow. we'll promote it to our membership, because they're a little different because they're a DEX, right? So I don't think they're not like the centralized exchanges where they just take, all their users EOS and just vote. I don't think it works that way. So, because obviously you can't stake with new DEX, right? Like,
that's interesting. So, and in terms of like just BPM SIGs, so this would be one of the ones that would be of the 15 of 21 needed to turn on inflation.
Yeah. So there's at least one, and EOS Nation would be another one. So there's two. We're not that far off. And I think we're really dealing with a cultural gap at the root of this whole top 21 vote buying thing. I think it's another example where maybe just different cultures, different concepts in Europe, United States, Canada, that to us, vote buying is something, I think, nefarious, borderline corrupt, but it's not perceived that way by most of these block producers. It's perceived, maybe the opposite would be worse. It was an interesting perspective. I talked to somebody a while back and they said, look, for us, the idea that we would keep as much as possible would be stealing, because we're getting these rewards and we feel running a block producer node is more of a service to the network based on our other interests. Like we do, these exchanges, I know there's good money being top 21, but do you think, Bitfinex makes more on its block producer or its trading fees for its EOS pairing, right? Let's say the margins for its EOS pairing are way higher, the gross margins, than running nodes and dealing with all this. So these folks they're just businesses. You remember that at their core. This isn't some like corrupt takeover. We hear cartel and I'm not making excuses for everything. I'm not saying it's perfect and I don't have all the information entirely, but I don't think it's as bad as people believe, and I don't think it's anywhere near as immovable as it appears. We just need to present a better option, and I think this changes like that. It's it. Just what's the better option?
Of all the scammy, slightly questionable vote buying things going on, the biggest one to me is the sock puppet BPs.
Yeah,
I saw a couple tweets there that Binance they're propping up a couple sock puppets.
Yeah,
so
okay.
That's a bit
weak.
more
okay.
problem, I would say.
Right, well, but isn't it optimizing returns for them? It's really how they're looking at it. We need to make that not profitable. I think it's the best approach. You gonna say something, Michael?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I guess my biggest thing that I don't understand is that I don't know everyone's take on the vote. Is that something that's going to be looked at in with the governance, or because I tend to agree. I think there's probably pros and cons. Is it something that can even be stopped? Because I do. The biggest thing I see is, and I'm glad it looks as though that Block One is looking at kind of have a ranking on. They're kind of evaluating each BP on some kind of criteria, like a KPI, key performance indicator, on who should be voted on and who shouldn't. To me, that's the most important, because at the end of the day, Binance right now, I think they're the 19th producer. And what I'd like to see is B1 and even Eden with their proxy is really, what you can't just be the BPs are producing blocks and that's all that counts. What needs to happen is who is doing the best to promote EOS of the VPs. To me, those are the ones deserve to be in the top 21. So with that being said, I think, especially, and I'm going to reach out to Kevin and let him know, it's just being more thorough in your votes. Like right now, Binance, I think they're only about 1 million votes. The votes are so high in the top 21, it's almost impossible to catch them from a ground level. But if you get enough of a proxy, I think they're only by a couple million votes in the top 21. So theoretically, if Block One, and I'm not saying, there's probably pros and cons, and I don't know what they all are, but I'm just using Binance as an example. They could take 2 million of their 100 million votes and vote for the 20 21st and 20th and 22nd BPs and basically knock Binance out of the top 21 if they really wanted to. So instead of using your 50 million votes on someone that's already, like B1, instead of using their 50 million votes on someone that's already in the top 21, so you can strategically use the votes to, even if there is vote buying, to kind of put in the top people. And I think that's what they're looking at doing. And to me, that's more important than to say, whether to eliminate vote buying or not. It's really getting the top 21 most valued VPs that are doing the most for EOS to drive liquidity, marketing, and usage that's going to affect price moving forward. To me, is the most important. Yep. And the same thing with Eden and their proxy, if Eden can show why this is what we're going to do, we're going to bring usage, the same process, the same philosophy with Eden and what it's able to do. And I think that can really help move EOS moving forward.
Absolutely. So it looks like we've got, I've been Telegram chatting with Heady Eddie here, who's is a pretty popular guy. I've seen him lots in Telegram, and he's interested in joining Eden. So Eddie, if you want to kind of introduce yourself, feel free.
I don't know if it's just audio.
Yeah, that's fine. It's whatever you want. Just giving people, Mondays are about letting people introduce themselves first and foremost. So we let that take priority, and then otherwise it's just open discussion.
Yeah, I never talk on these things. But...
And you don't have to
I'm Eddie.
either.
It's all good. Just I've barely been paying attention in the past couple months, just all sorts of stuff going on, but trying to catch up. But yeah, I haven't paid any attention.
And have you been following? So are you like a long time EOS guy, Genesis holder type thing?
Yeah, and paid more attention in the beginning, but
seen you around for a long time. Are you interested in Eden, Eddie? Like becoming a member and getting back into things, or are you just kind of cautiously optimistic on the sidelines?
I'll join Eden, but I have my reservations, but probably ill-founded.
That's okay. What are they? This is the forum for it. Let's hear them.
Yeah.
Oh, just like you never know who's involved with and agendas and.
Okay.
It's
like concerned that there's kind of like a sort of a shadow layer within the membership, if you will.
Well, around EOS itself.
Oh, in general. Okay.
I mean, the identity thing has been pushed for a minute. We've got,
Okay.
I wish there were other things going on, but Eden's also interesting. It's just
cool.
Who knows?
Yeah, at least Eden seems like the best opportunity we've had in a long time to start to recollect the community, right? We've been broken to pieces and a lot of FUD, a lot of angry people, and all for very good reasons. But I feel at least Eden's something to sort of like a shining light. Oh, wait, if we all go here, maybe something good can come of it. And EOS can kind of turn around. So hopefully that's where you're at, Eddie. At least it's something that could be good.
Well, I think too, just getting into doing. I think I was just going to say, Eddie, I don't know if you're doing the mock election on the 17th. I think that would help give a better picture of what it is. I mean, I wasn't involved in the first one, but I'm definitely looking forward to July 17th to do that and take part in it. I think it'll help make a decision if it's something you want to join or not.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I've been running those, and of course, I'm gonna, shill for you guys to attend it. But I will say that it's better than you think. It's gonna be better than you think. It's amazing how powerful and just how empowered the participants all felt. Like to the letter. Every single person, just whether they were running or not, just felt like they mattered, like they got their point across, they reached consensus. And whether it was the perfect consensus, we did have a couple people lose that wanted funding, for example, but they felt good about it. It didn't feel robbed. It didn't feel like some insider bullshit or whatever. Like Chris, really just, nobody knew. I still don't know who this guy is.
There was
he's
one
a deep
person.
fake from somewhere, but still, he just kind of worked his way through, and he had the right plan, and people liked what he proposed to do with the funding, and that won. And I just thought that was a really important victory, because there were a lot of, say, well-known folks involved in this election that just seemingly would have been maybe easy with such a small group too of only 64 for them to just sort of sweep through, right? Because maybe the group doesn't know anybody else, and so just go, okay, at least I know that person, maybe they'll do something. But that's not how it went. When you look at the tapes and stuff, people really, they were into it, and I think that was inspiring for me.
Except for the one person I know about, she wasn't happy. I think her name was I don't know, Karen or something. No,
she wasn't happy because she was a non-crypto person who was being shell-shocked for person. I mean, she was coming. Her boyfriend is someone in our community, and left Dan's book out on the couch, and so she went from what is crypto to Eden election. I mean, struggled to get an EOS account. It was too much for her,
It's too bad great for her for what she did. And it's just too bad she was frustrated and felt like she was being singled out as not being because I watched her response, and that call that she just kind of hung up, and it was like, that's unfortunate, because we could have helped her. The next election's now here, and by this point amount of time, since then and now, she'd be up to speed and have a much better chance. But maybe she'll come back. Who knows?
That speaks to something that I hope that we're going to see some proposals toward. And if not, I've been starting to kind of collect some things on my own. But what's the process for that person? I feel like that's a big thing we're lacking right now, where I'm not saying put too much time and resources toward the 0 layer person to try to get them to this point. But still, what about the people who hear about Eden, have nothing to do with EOS, because by streamlining that process for them to become a part of this, you're effectively streamlining onboarding to EOS, right? Which is, so we're gaining in both directions. And we know that for EOS to become what we want it to become, we just need ideally the best customer, the best UX, the best user experience in the industry alone would be a huge advantage.
Well, I know a lot of it is just getting set up, right? Getting your EOS account set up, and it's just making it simple for dummies. I mean, that was one of the biggest complaints that I seem to hear. It's just, and I think that's something that's being looked at, being fixed and worked on, is the use of application, because that's, when people can't do something, you tend to shut down. And I know that's something that's being worked on, but hopefully that's something that Eden can do and work. Just going to get a process. Okay, you're new on board. Okay, here's your proxy for, here's, you sign up for your account. Here's your proxy for Eden. Here's how you stake your EOS. I mean, even staking. I mean, I don't even know what, I just figured that out recently, and I got a master's degree. So it's like you're trying to, you guys here. Yeah, just trying to figure out how to do these different things. You just need to make it simple. I mean, you look at a lot of the other cryptos, and it's just everyone stakes, and I think that's, if you look at EOS, it has some of the biggest volume, but yet, obviously it goes up and down, because if more people would stake, there would be less volatility. That would tend to raise the price, because people aren't necessarily and I think having the power up model come, and I think some people are obviously waiting for bullish to come out. So there's, opportunities, but that's something that needs to be considered a kind of, okay, you join step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this is what you should do. And I think that would really go a long way in bringing utility and, for EOS.
Yeah, definitely. Looks like, so I feel like Doug Weisberg's been on here before.
Oh yeah, Doug's old
Right?
school. Right.
Yeah. But I see there's another, it's blocked out now.
Sudip? Yeah.
You look new. If you want to introduce yourself and say hello, feel free.
Oh, you don't have to, but that option's available.
Otherwise, we'll just keep rambling.
Or just get listeners, yeah. We have a little call maybe where every like 20 minutes we just go. By the way, open mic. Anybody who wants to just result the community, but
he's on text mode, so he'll text us. Sounds good. If you have any questions, just throw them in the chat.
Yeah, I just saw it. Sudip just said he'll be on via text. So,
but this was part of like when I was talking to Chris and Dan had asked me to do the election again. I was trying to think about the best marketing strategy essentially for, and the goal was to get at least twice as many. So that would be like 128 people. And I'm always thinking like integration and, multi-use, like efficiency, just as someone who's always been an entrepreneur and with limited resources, like, never really having any funding for the most part. Well, if we get members, that's probably the best way to get participation in the election, right? So how can we come up with various things that will attract new members or facilitate new member onboarding or whatever? And that was the creation of this open mic, the Thursday podcast, and then the Saturday kind of webinar format. But, it'd be really good to start hearing from people as to like which of these you guys really like. In general, because I think we definitely need more of this. And to Michael's point, it will dramatically reduce our drama because just Telegram's not good for it. It's not good for charged discussion. It just isn't. It's why EOS Gov's a shit show. When somebody gets fired up over there, it just evolves because it feels personal. It's just words. There's you're not going to see that smile. You got no body language. I mean, obviously we'd love to all, be doing a meetup and, on a Puerto Rican beach or something, sipping margaritas, but this is what we have. And, but I think we need to use it as much as possible. And I'd really love to see more members even just doing like, I don't know, open Zoom room or something. I don't know what the solution is, but.
Well, I know that I think the one thing, I mean, I don't know how much you guys utilize like the Eden members to meet the Eden calls or, Eden member. I do think, especially people that have kind of been vetted and been vouched for within the community, just doing an open call that way, I think would help. I know obviously Eden's growing. But you have and there's some members that that are in the process of being added in. But what are you at now? It's about 128 members that you said about now. It's over 100, isn't it? I think that are.
It's over 150. Just 128 was the goal for
150.
The election. Just how many people I'm hoping will attend Saturday. That was that goal. But no, we've we're getting there. Where are we? I should bring it up. I like to have it when we're watching. It says 145 active, 6 pending. So, there's a new stat. Have you guys seen this? There's a new box on the website. Here, I'll share. I'll share real quick for anybody who hasn't seen it. They've added a little thing that shows treasury here, community stats. So we've got 2,645 EOS in our account and 145 active members, 6 pending invitations. So that's Clarion just slowly grinding in the back. Yeah, so there we are. So everybody goes through.
But I do think, I do think having the just those discussions, and I do think, you know, is to think big. I mean, if you look at EOS and where it's at, I mean, as far as the technology goes, I mean, the opportunity is, you know, in my mind, there's no competition. It's just a matter of how do we get that funding there and to think big. And obviously, you know, there's pros and cons of inflation and whatever that you do. But I like Chris's, what he said when I first saw him talk, is to move forward, because, you know, something needs to change, and it is changing. But to think in broad strokes, because the opportunity really is, you know, available, but it's just obviously just keep pushing forward. And I do think, you know, I'll try to do my part to get people to, especially after participating in this, to really to do what they can to join on the 17th, because I think it's important, even if they don't plan on becoming Eden members.
Yeah,
to
exactly.
take part in the process. I mean, it's hard to sit there and complain constantly about 4 years ago and not, okay, well, what are you doing to change that? Okay.
Right.
You know, you have Dan Larimer, you know, coming back into the community, reaching out. This is what he sees in his vision. Well, you know, if you don't try to support that, how can you just sit there and constantly complain, right? If you don't take part in process. So I think it's important to, you know, just continue to get that word out. And obviously it's working. I mean, more and more people are joining. Obviously getting the first 100 is a lot harder than getting to 400, because now every 100 can introduce someone. So it's going to grow exponentially. And you know, it just, so I'm excited about the future of it. It's just keep doing what you're doing, and just keep moving the ball forward.
Yeah. Well, thanks. And you know, it's definitely it. But, and, you know, I know, you know, we're concerned with things like the funding and being able to get to a point to have an impact, but I just keep feeling like we're forgetting the simplest thing, which is that right now, the best thing to do is to be inviting people, everyone. Like, get the numbers up. The funding will follow. The funding will follow. Like, if we were at 10,000 members right now, how could we be ignored? How? There's no way. There's no way that Block One and the block producers and all the other stakeholders would just say, we're not putting any funding into that. Bullshit.
No, and that's true.
Total bullshit. Right. We would have money.
Right. So build it and they will come. That's that's a good point. That's a good point.
So we need the members. Never mind. Let's not underestimate the collective, say, HR value of a group of aligned individuals that large, with the various skill sets we all possess. And, you know, I mean, if I took, you know, 20 Eden members here and put together, say, a kind of a volunteer customer service group, so that when new people are being introduced to EOS, you know, we could do some one-on-ones in Telegram or on a Zoom and some hand-holding, right? Troubleshooting. I mean, with Werbly, you know, people, you know, it wasn't always the most popular thing with the KYC and everything we did, but one thing that everybody loved is, you know, I put a customer service team on it right away because I knew we'd have challenges, and everybody loved it because we got back to people. We used Zendesk. You know, I didn't have 1 million people. I had like 2 or 3 staff dedicated to it, and then rest of us would jump in, but people were just amazed because that's right. Which other blockchains have like customer service teams? But even if just Eden accomplished something like that in the near term, a legitimate welcome crew, right? Where Karen would have had a completely different experience had that been in existence, and she could have just plugged into someone who could have helped her through the EOS account creation. You know, I guarantee you she would have come to that election in a completely different space. Because she did so much wrong. She spent twice as much money as she needed to. Like, you know, it was a mess.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't participate, so I didn't see that particular example. But no, it makes sense, and I do hear what you're saying as far as, and I understand too. I mean, it takes time. I mean, Rome wasn't built in a day, and that, you know, you're not going to get millions of dollars in funding, tomorrow. So I do get that. But I do agree with you that the bigger Eden is and the more people working towards a similar goal, the more powerful it becomes. It is exponentially, because, it's kind of the assembly line mentality, right? I'd rather have 1% of 100 people than, 100 people doing the same thing. So it's kind of that mentality. And so that makes absolute sense.
And just what an attractive thing, if what we're trying to do first and foremost is get people using EOS, whether it's as a medium of exchange, a currency, or as a developer or entrepreneurs building on the chain. When you see a completely and totally organized and engaged community of thousands of people dedicating their time and energy to making this happen, I mean, I think it's even more powerful potentially without a big budget, because that says a lot. I mean, I believe 100% that if Dan, when you started this, had immediately gotten a big check, so to speak, from Block One or the block producers, that Eden would be a failure. It'd be blown up right now, but it would fall on its own weight. It would have attracted too many of the wrong people, in my opinion, initially, who would only been after the money. I think we would have seen a lot of scamming in that environment. We just no resiliency built up. This is being built, as anybody knows who's done any work with culture and trying to build an organization, whether it's a work or a club or anything. We're defining it right now. This first 100 people really is going to set the tone going forward, right? The self-policing, the attitude, the type of individuals. And right now, it's pretty high quality people. I mean, some of the standards I think that initially were out there were set very high at first by Dan with some of his analogies, like, someone you would trust with your private keys to your crypto. Well, that's probably, I kind of say, I don't trust anybody with that. But we got the point, and it's still selective. And I think selective enough that it's acting as a bit of an antivirus. So we're not pulling in either just trolls or, again, people with, possibly selfish, self-centered and greedy intentions. Because to get involved at this stage, there isn't a big check waiting for you. A big chunk of EOS you could just grab and do whatever with. I think we lost Michael, but so I think this is going to pay off. And I think it's just unfortunate. I've got to learn with Dan. Dan's a programmer, and he's a public guy, and he's many other things too. I don't want to pigeonhole him, but I don't like. He's not used to being like a manager type. I think you'll be the first to admit that. And so, probably in hindsight, I don't think it was a good idea that we talked right away about that huge amount of funding, because I think it anchored people around it. If you know anything about negotiations and anchoring, everybody's mind is like, RAM fees are bust, 0.25% of inflation or bust. Block One, giving us 10 million EOS or bust. And I think that was part of the reason why this initiative I did with the block producer kind of came across as like, pissing in the wind, like, it's 400 EOS, what's that going to do? And it's like, well, I think if we were stepping back and you weren't thinking that like the goal here was to be getting more like 4 million EOS right away, 4,000 EOS a month is pretty good funding. Like there's not a lot of organizations on the planet that bring in $16,000 a month for a community oriented organization. Like that's not pennies. That can hire people, that can fund some things ongoing, right? Like that could pay for a pretty serious customer service team, as I mentioned, and legitimately give people some income to make them be able to dedicate themselves to it, or so that's probably part of it.
It's a step. It's an increment. It's an incremental step. No one's ever looked at this as being the final. We did it. We got it. Like no. I mean, we're just starting. This is just the beginning. So I
think it's naturally protecting us right now in ways that I'm not sure that everybody understands or that we'll ever be able to quantify entirely, but we're not getting you know, what's I can't think of the term of it, but like, uh, like the FOMO crowd, if you will. We're not getting the people who are piling in because, there's easy money available.
Yeah. Sudeep has a question. Are you running a banner ad or providing a banner GIF, a join Eden message that can be placed on existing DApps, BP service sites? No, it's a great idea. Though.
Yeah, that's a good funder for this type of election too. Could be a good idea for, just throw a couple bucks at somebody to develop something like that. I mean, we have the graphics, the brand guide, so I suppose it wouldn't be hard to do. That's a good one. No, and then I was talking actually something else that came from my conversation with our Nudex liaison was and I've been putting forth to Dan for a while, but I'm going to try to push him a little harder with the proposal, which is for corporate support, corporate sponsors, basically, right? Like, of course, we want to be inviting in, as Michael was saying, as many stakeholders as possible. Why not, right? Like the Eden membership portal right now, what a great place to be able to put Nudex logo, right? And click here to join Nudex, click here to, whatever, and allow for some advertising. I mean, there you go. There's even more, donations coming in, and
every little bit helps, right? And especially if we can take these small amounts of income, like the BP, for example, or potentially those ad revenue that would be possible, then that all then gets rolled into, like you're saying, Dom, because kind of like this core funding idea. Like I do work on a charity, and that's one of the biggest things we try to solve is not the one-off donations we get, not the grants, but the core funding that can pay for people to then make it their mission to get the big grants, to get the big money,
yes,
to accomplish the big tasks, right?
Yeah, so I've been working on a structure. I just sent my draft over to Dan. Not just me, we, myself and Ray and Anna, for I think what the best corporate structure is, and it's kind of cool in that we've been talking to the state of Wyoming, and they've been great. Like it's so funny because Wyoming's like it's not a very populated place, so like. Literally, I just called the Secretary of State's office and like got there to somebody. Like I'm not the Secretary of State, but like they're one of somebody in their like main staff, who's just like, yeah, what can I do to help? Oh, here's my cell phone number. And like, just totally helpful. But we need a national organization to handle federal tax situations and to provide us with the 5013C. So that we can have the nonprofit designation. But what we can do that's super cool, especially because it's Wyoming, is with the DAO, which is the Wyoming DAO designation is just an LLC that you designate a special way. For people who are familiar with corporate structures, like there's lots of kinds of LLCs. There's serious LLCs. There's
Hey, Michael.
I got them. There's series LLCs. There's LLCs as S corps, right? So this is an LLC with a DAO designation, which means it has some different rules around fiduciary responsibility, and it's allowed to structure its operating agreement, which is really the gist of it, in a way that other LLCs can't. But in Wyoming, there's no state income tax. So you don't have to file a state tax form as a business there. It doesn't exist.
That's
so
handy.
The DAOs can be Wyoming LLCs, each Eden, as members of the 5013C. That's like our national organization in the US. And the DAOs don't have to file tax returns. Because what the DAOs will do is be basically granted the right by the main nonprofit to distribute its donations. That's all the Edens are doing. They're acting as distribution mechanisms of its funding. No harm, no foul, no fiduciary. We'll have none of that. And individuals won't have to worry about 1099s or anything. The 5013C, like, if we pay a business to do something, we're gonna have to track that donation. But if it's a nonprofit, we'll just send them a 1099, and everything will be fine. So you as an elected rep, this will dramatically cut down. You'll have no fiduciary responsibility at all, and you'll have no personal liability whatsoever, because there'll be two layers of protection too. Your individual DAO that you're a part of in Eden, and then the nonprofit. And it'll also protect Dan substantially, which is, obviously important. But if he's chairman of the board and then puts a board together, that's a great position. And then he could still be elected in the Eden DAO or remain as the lead in the DAO. But there's a lot of options there too, right? I was like, we could sell some board seats, right? I mean, not sell, but you gotta, if you want a board seat, you gotta pay. You gotta be a big donor. You can do corporate things. You can do campaigns. Like you were talking about, Chris. We can do a lot with it. But the other beauty will be, if B1 decided to drop a grant, they'd actually get a deduction. You don't get a deduction if you give us that money right now.
That makes it appealing.
So in the end, though, the beauty of it all would be no taxes, essentially. Create a totally tax-free environment for ourselves. But the other thing 501(c) does then is it can have an endowment, therefore a asset fund. And endowments are allowed to operate very similar. Michael, you'll know more about this than me, so please correct me if I'm wrong at all. But most bigger nonprofits have an endowment, their base source of capital and assets. And instead of spending the principal, they in their budget annually spend the profit usually. But those can be managed in a variety of ways, similar to VC family office types. So what that would enable, because this comes up a lot with Eden, is if we really want to fund EOS apps, you could do that through the nonprofit. As a rep for Eden, you'd just be the representative saying, I'm choosing to fund, EOS Power Up. Let's say that's turning into a for-profit business. And in return, EOS Power Up has given us their word that they're going to give us a donation of 20% of their stock or whatever. And you could do that.
That's perfect.
We could grow legit over time.
That fits with what EOS Starter, like what we were thinking about, right? Where we could then kick back. And so that's that's awesome.
It opens it for everybody. It's like what I'm doing right now becomes so easy then, because it's just straight donation. All block producers could do similar things. It just needs some final vetting, but I'm pretty sure we nailed it. And if the tax situation's all I need, definite confirmation about, but I do think it works that way. Because it helps so much, because then we could just make an Eden for every group. Every group can be its own LLC DAO in Wyoming, basically. And then when we start to grow from there, each country just follows somewhat similar model. They may not have DAO designations yet, but at least a equivalent 501(c) or a nonprofit organization in each country. And then we could eventually find the best global domicile for Eden Global Foundation. And then, and you have reps and stuff that can, be sent to the bigger governing bodies. And I don't know, I think it's a winner.
Sounds very scalable, which is part of the long-term goal, right? So that's awesome.
And these DAOs are because once we'll have a format, right? Template. And once we do the first one, because the operating agreements will be the same. It's going to be the Eden consensus mechanism. And you could commit, your bylaws if you wanted, sort of for the record publicly, but by adding into your operating agreement, but you don't need to. Just keep those as a matter of corporate record. But you could spin these up. It's an LLC. It's $250. And once we have all the documentation ready for people, spinning up your own Eden will be we can keep on the website as PDFs. But I think we'll want to have a membership thing. So most likely, I think the best way to do it would be you apply to start in Eden to the Eden Foundation. Then they go, great, here's the criteria, here's your template. We're willing to put up the initial $500 once you get 50 members or something. Maybe something like that to make sure you're not going to want to just create hundreds of these things and have them go nowhere, but something simple like that. And then it's just handled.
And these would be Edens that have nothing necessarily to do with EOS. These would just be whatever.
Yeah. Either additional EOS ones or any. They can be any type.
Yeah.
But that will allow for the flexibility though too, because then each of these groups can have their own bylaws and they can have potentially a slightly different operating agreement if they want. So they can build to suit, right? I think it could be a pretty sweet situation considering what we have to work with this stage, because the corporate law is still pretty far behind for the innovation of decentralized communities. This could be a good one though.
Wyoming stepped up.
Yeah, I haven't seen anybody really kind of criticize what they produced. It very much, my understanding, it's pretty much written by crypto people, so to speak, like blockchain industry proponents who put it all together. And of course, don't take credit from the Wyoming lawmakers. They obviously had to, review it, pass it, and do all that work. But it's very friendly to us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It opens a lot of doors, and the timing is excellent. Like for what we're trying to accomplish, right? So that's
they just started. Yeah. I think July 1st was the first ones that you could even have. June 1st or July 1st is beginning. So
cool. Sweet. So how's so for on Saturday then, this coming election, what I think you mentioned earlier, what are you at so far for registrants? Are we looking better?
Yeah, we're looking okay. I think the positive, I have it right here. We have 140 signed up.
Yeah, I think the push, there could be a really big push here. A lot of people were last minute to be made. And I think as the community, and maybe even Dan saying a word, I think would be helpful.
Yeah.
As well. Dan just saying a word, really pushing that and the importance of it, just taking part, even if you don't plan to be a member, I think would be helpful as well.
Yeah, especially like you say, you don't have to be a member, just in the context of experiencing what it's all about. That, hopefully there's enough interest. Hopefully we've been doing our job well enough, Dominic, hopefully that enough people are at least heard about what's going on and might be interested.
Yeah, I think moving forward, we need a little bit better strategy. If I'm being honest with myself a little, we came up with these things, which I think was a good idea, but I probably needed a better standard campaign of, regular releases, social media, reminders to Dan, because I did send him a blurb a little while ago. He pushed it to his Twitter pretty quickly, but I haven't been remembering to I should be reminding him at least once a week, to have been sending it. I'm not posting it as much. I think for the next one, the idea is that the kind of V1 of Eden OS will be ready for elections, at least the voting part and all of that. And so, putting I think maybe a smaller, adding to the election team and maybe having an election team of maybe 3 to 5 that can really focus on just awareness and getting people, but it'll still be primarily about driving new members. So I think we need a campaign that combines those two things. It's basically a new member drive and, sign up for elections, but this is likely the last time you'll be able to do it as a non-Eden member.
Yeah, well, I would definitely make that point. I would definitely make that point that for non-Eden members to participate, this might be the last. I mean, I would make a big deal of that. I think obviously, you know, getting the word out and continuing to push. I think people like myself, you know, just getting individuals that have been involved in these chats too, of what they've learned, or maybe people that have went through the first one, getting out there, because I think a lot of people are you know, they're not sure if they're, you know, yes or no about Eden, or, you know, what can they contribute? Like myself, I mean, I'm not really a non-technical person. So, but like you said before, everyone can contribute and has ways to contribute, whether it's marketing or finance or a number of different things that they can bring to the table, with all different backgrounds, as well as their networks, right? Because you get new people that come in, you know, they have networks of people. So, you know, the more grassroots, the more people get involved, I think just the better it is for the Eden process, overall, for sure.
Yeah, I was just looking. We only have, I think, 5 or 6 people signed up that are non-members, which on the one hand is good, because I'm actually pretty excited that all of you who are existing members have taken the time to sign up. Thank you, because last time, you know, we didn't have quite as many. It's probably about 80% or so of the existing membership, but you know.
Yeah, we need more than that. I mean, 6 is really a really low number. So as big as the community is, and I think, I mean, I'll try to do my part, just get the word out, the importance for non-members to join and what it means, and, you know, doing their part in the process. I think that will help. Maybe just getting some people that haven't spoke up before, maybe some non-Eden members, other guys that you guys might know, just to have them to speak out why it's important to be involved in the process. Because I think a lot of people are just scared, because they're maybe not scared, but they're interested, but they don't want to, you know, step out, right? Just they need that little bit of push to get out of their comfort zone, and why it's helpful for them to do that, for the, you know, for the community and for, you know, themselves, to take part and to participate, because that's ultimately what will drive new membership, and get new people. Because we're, you know, once you get a new person to actually join Eden, you know, that they could bring they have 25 invites or how many invites, so it'll grow.
There's no
that much faster.
There's no limit. Yeah, there's no limit at this point. All we did is, originally when we were discussing the first group that Dan invited, which was about 20, you know, and I think I brought this up. I'm always thinking about, like I said, the culture piece and everything, but you know, we don't want necessarily someone to invite like the first 40,
right,
know, or something like that, right? And like,
right.
I don't know, because I'm super involved and active, right? And other people may not have the time, but I could have gone nuts. I could have stuffed, you know,
right
after that 20, I could have done the next 30 easy.
Right. Right. I hear what you're saying.
I already account for 10%. I mean, I have 15 people I've invited directly out of the 150. So I hold back because I don't want that. It's not my goal. I'm not trying to stuff the ballot box.
Yeah,
I'm not going to run.
I hear what you're saying, but I think the main thing is really this week concentrate on the non-Eden members, and maybe try to think of some ways how to get more participation. And I think the thing too is getting the word out. Is even if they don't have an idea for funding, or that's fine, right? It's just participate.
Yeah, of course,
is the key. So. But anyway, it was great introducing myself to you guys. I actually have another commitment I have to drop off here. So I appreciate the time, and looking forward to working with you guys more in the future.
Nice to meet you, Michael. Thanks for joining in.
All right, take care. Thanks again. Bye.
Yeah. Well, that's good. It's always kind of positive to get that perspective too.
Yeah.
You know, from someone who's kind of on the outside looking in, so to speak, observing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. What are you saying, Josh?
Yeah,
Quiet with the mic off, camera
I
off.
think he's just listening.
Just listening. Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to things we have going on. There's also potentially, I think, some other initiatives with some pre-existing block producers that I'm hearing a little bit about in the background, some rumblings that they may do some type of donation as well. Probably not to the degree of the initiative I set up, but I understand that. This is where I'm setting up's a lot different. Some of these folks do a lot of other things for the community. But then to the point of funding, like, I don't know if anybody's read that or taken. I know you have, Josh. You looked at the Scriptsio thing from one of our members, Joe. But that's an example where Joe's got this project that he's pretty much willing to just totally kind of donate to Eden for the most part. I think if the plan were to commercialize it more, he'd want to retain some interest, but I know he's willing to give a sizable stake of this. And essentially what he did is he created a kind of a WordPress blogging site with social plugins, but it will cross-post to Hive so that you can earn on your blogs. And there's also some pretty good capabilities for then cross-posting to other, popular socials like Medium, Twitter, Facebook, etc. Fair amount of plugins, but it's configurable for us to kind of do what we want with it. I mean, he's not a coder, so he's kind of set up this real MVP of it. But I think if we grabbed it and grabbed some of our developers, and maybe some front end folks, this could be a great community tool that's kind of, controlled by Eden and Eden people. And we know we're not necessarily dealing with bullshit censorship issues and other garbage like that. We could find ways to make sure Joe's very, very much a freedom loving individual. So, but the idea being that maybe we'd also do something with that, where since it's all cross posting to Hive, you have to turn that on, but ideally everybody would, and then we could take some of that Hive revenue and donate it to Eden.
I made an account. I logged in. I made a comment on it and everything. How does it work? Did you know it works so for the scripts thing? Like, do you run out of the ability to comment if you run out of these scripts? Do you know how that works?
I don't think so. There's a whole tokenization, and
yeah,
I actually have a model that I know that we could use if we wanted. That's been built by somebody who really knows what they're doing. That we could potentially tokenize it ourselves even and go that route. I mean, Scriptsio then as a private organization could try to get listed on like a Nudex or something, right? With an EOS-based community token. But it could potentially be our own early stage kind of MVP for a content platform that has much better rewards, basically replacing to some degree some of the promise of voice. I mean, obviously it's very early stage, but it's just an example of another thing we could potentially do, though, that could create another revenue stream. And even if it wasn't large at first, these things start adding up, and next thing you know, you have an avalanche.
Yeah. I mean, it seems okay so far, high level. I also started looking at Slack a little more today, and it also seems okay. Like, depends on the purpose, right? On the function. I'm open to all these.
Well, and like anything, though, it's also going to be in the way we use the tool, right? Because obviously Slack can scroll too. I mean, if you're just going to blab in every channel, and and not stick to relevant information, it just becomes as much of a mess as Telegram really over time. You know, we have to kind of train ourselves to say, this is a forum, for example, about elections, you know, don't post anything in here that's not election related, so that, you know, people aren't scrolling through 300 messages of, you know, Dom's an asshole for starting a block producer node, for example, like, which completely monopolized our public Eden on EOS channel. That was probably better for a member discussion, or in that instance, maybe, you know, having seen that that was popular, we'd start up a special Slack just for that. Say, let's keep the discussion in here, guys. So that's my concerns with Slack. Like, we need a little bit of an operations policy internally as a group on how we're going to use these tools that we can point to, or none of them are going to serve us very well.
Yeah.
But we do need something. I'm also been working on something that I'm trying to get some help from Anna with, as far as our kind of a content process. You know, like, if, first of all, making sure we're regularly releasing stuff, but let's say, you know, someone from the community wanted to write up a nice post about Eden or their project or whatever, and, you know, we wanted to push it to the Medium page, right? How would you do that right now? Does anybody know? You don't, because there isn't a process. I mean, you could ask me, but no, it's not going to work. I'm not going to be the central point for this stuff. That'll be a huge bottleneck. So, you know, whatever it is, I mean, we're going to set up an email address that people can go to, you know, just, I think we need to optimize ops a bit here. And that we definitely need a project plan. We had Simon Case, I don't know if that's his real name, but that's his Telegram name, who sounds like an excellent high-level project manager, who's totally willing to kind of take some rough material, if you will, and turn it into something nice. But that as well, I think, would be a huge advertising opportunity and marketing for Eden, would be to have a public project board, whether we use a free tool like a Trello or, you know, Asana or something, but get it in there, get it organized so people can watch progress. People can take a look at proposals maybe from this upcoming election. Like, I was thinking at the very minimum, I think after the election, we should start a new thread on the forums, you know, with the winners and the projects that they're going to fund, and they can hopefully keep up their threads, because it'll also be good for them if they want to get elected again. Some of this stuff will be in the tool Clarion stuff for us as members, but like I said, that won't be available to non-members. And let's face it, we start making more moves like the power up thing that are just bigger and more frequent, the tone's going to change. The tone's going to change. We just have some resentment resistance right now. And if you don't make a big move, you're not going to get people's attention yet. But a lot of small moves eventually equals a big move in people's minds.
We're so early. I mean, we've only had one random mock election with one random dude in a small. I mean, it's important to power up, but it's a small thing. Like, it's nothing groundbreaking. So yeah, it's early.
Well, and there's only outside of the Clarion team on the outside of the Clarion team on the development side, there's pretty much just me on the admin side. Like, that's it. I'm the Eden team, right? So, and there's people who have offered, and I need to help get those folks organized too. But like I said, there's been a couple of these initiatives: the corporate structure, looking into the DAOs, the election, and some other things that were a little more urgent. But after the election, my first priority is going to be to reach out to everybody who's reached out to me about wanting to volunteer more, like yourself, Josh. And I think just a voluntary once a week meeting needs to get established, maybe twice for time zones, which is a check-in where people can just, hey, what's being worked on? What can I do? Does anybody need help? And then eventually, we need this project plan with it to keep ourselves organized. Then eventually they'll have kind of a project board up, I hope. And then people can just grab stuff, right? Take ownership of it and just go with it. And then I think we'll start moving quite well. And that could potentially be a good initiative too. Maybe someone will throw a couple shekels at it, So maybe we can have almost like a bounty system for people. So they might, I don't know, be incentivized, make a couple bucks. Even side hustle money would be better than zero, right?
It helps. It helps, especially, you get people. Yeah, it certainly can help. Yeah.
I think that starting the seeds of essentially an EOS customer service team will pay off handsomely in the long run for this community. That as we get more funding and this grows into a legitimate, highly visible body that can really have its own website, it's just new to EOS, start here. And there are just, dozens of people available to help onboard, tons and tons of tutorials and building up all of that, and hopefully tools in time to just, let's get this to the point where sign up for Gmail, baby. Start an EOS account. Sign up with Gmail. Let's use it. 2FA, whatever. I know all those people are pretty much peckers who are evil, stealing all our data, but let's use them for now to make things easy for us and basically use their tools to onboard their users to our world. Right? Use their tools against them. Use Google and Facebook against itself. Because that's really my thing that I want to tackle hardcore. I'm done with the data. I'm done. I cannot believe how badly, in my opinion, the information age has failed humanity. We're literally in the information age, but we're more ignorant possibly than we ever have been. Because we have better access to info than we've ever had in human history by an order of magnitude, but it's garbage. And it's nowhere near properly compensated. It's being completely exploited because I know people don't know what their data is really worth. If you could start to tell that story in a way that people will understand, kind of see that, I always have this idea of making a video where we take someone's Facebook status update and we follow it with an animation back through Facebook servers to their data pools, to selling it to the marketing company that then puts the ad back in front of them in their feed and be like, see, that one little thing went here. It was sold 6 times. I just, guys, you're giving it away.
There's a couple good docs on that.
Huh?
Netflix has a couple docs on that, documentaries that sort of show.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen a couple of that's pretty interesting.
Yeah. I have an idea to do a whole, basically a data token ecosystem that does everything from timestamp when the data is first kind of created, and then tracks it, gives it a quality rating, and then allows the various stakeholders to sort of share in its value / IP over time, or allow some IP control in certain instances. But data as a currency is really my thought. I think, frankly, that's the true future currency. Commodity. It's not a currency. The sort of the most valuable future commodity will be data. Data, oil, gold. Literally, data will be a commodity. You're gonna have markets. All machine learning and AI algorithms basically depend on the amount of data they have for their value, for their efficacy. So it's going to be a big deal.
Yep.
Probably a little off
Josh.
topic for this rant, but
The Wyoming DAO, if the first Eden community starts using that, and first of all, I think that's very clever, the strategy you came up with. I hope that can hold weight, especially because the DAOs, there's still some uncertainty of like how that's going to be treated with the IRS for the federal taxes, but it could maybe be a mute subject with that strategy. So that's pretty awesome little drop there in the conversation a while ago. But it could be some publicity, just like that first DAO that was approved.
oh yeah.
That's been floating around quite a bit, and some EOS hating influencers have tried to ignore it. So it might have even floated around a little bit more. But the people who put that together have their own influence and publicity and stuff. A lot of the different, I don't know if you want to call them stakeholders, but the people who were very instrumental and very involved in getting that process going and keeping it going. So it could be a publicity move. Like the people who got Wyoming to move forward on that, to get the special select committee together.
Or you mean when we do, or you mean the one that was started by the state of Wyoming?
Yeah, they already have their own little group that has reach, and so if we are one of the next communities to create a DAO in that jurisdiction, even if we don't use it, even if we just create it, for its intended purpose, and then if we later on decide not to use it, that's fine. I think some good publicity would probably come out of that for EOS and for Eden.
And I've already talked to them, and they're all about it.
I did have one question.
Like you're saying, that one that already came out that was like in that town in Wyoming, right? Exactly. It's like the mayor of that town made that first DAO that kind of made the rounds in the scene. But the longer we wait, it's not going to be as big a news, right? So I'm definitely talking with Dan to be like, if we're going to do this, let's do this soon. And then I'll name drop him. And I'm sure they'll want to we'll get some cross, marketing from the state of Wyoming, because it's a big deal. Dan's a big deal. It'd be like, Dan for the most part, I haven't heard anybody dispute that he's credited with coming up with the whole concept, originally naming it, the idea of a DAO. So
yeah, it could be good for the credit for reestablishing more of that credibility for him too, for that to be kind of acknowledged in a bigger way. But which would also be good for Eden and good for EOS. The question that I had was, well, can the DAO, does it have to be a certain type of DAO? Like, can it only be token weighted voting, or can it be fractal governance? And so I went through all the examples I could find, all the forums, and I didn't see anything yet that says that it has to be a certain type of way that you operate the DAO. So that was very reassuring that we can definitely do the Eden communities there.
I already asked. I asked them about it, and they said that's what it is, right? And so basically the core feature is you have two choices for effectively your decision making or your operating agreement in this instance, and that is you can do it by code with a smart contract. And so this is the first time that that's accepted as a legal operating agreement. You could just submit your smart contract, say this is how it works, like maybe something closer to kind of like what Vigor does. I think they have a little more of a code oriented process, or it can be a manual process like Eden, where we just say, this is our consensus. It's political playoffs, essentially. And that's
we just draw sticks out of a pile.
Oh yeah, we have pretty good documentation on it.
That's awesome.
After this election, I gotta work on a little bit more. But yeah, that's it. We'll just be submitting that as so that's our consensus mechanism.
The other talking point I wanted to chime in on was like having visibility of projects where the EOS community can vote on them to get some like general consensus, as well as Eden members can vote. And there's a distinction between the Eden members and the EOS members, but at least we can get some participation from the EOS community that doesn't want to or can't for some reason be involved in Eden,
Even,
to
I'll
help.
get their opinion on projects they like. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like for example, if we like one thing I like to reference is there's a site that's a lot of companies use. It's canny.io. It's more of like a feature request thing, but it also has like a roadmap feature, and companies like ClickUp and others use that. I could share my screen to show you an example, but just
Yeah,
basically
do it.
it has a Kanban component to it. And if it's for
Right.
feature requests, then you're voting on things that you'd like to see highly considered to become new features, added into the roadmap. So the same thing could be done for projects. It could be sort of a feature request thing, just something very basic, where, like you said, they see things moving through the boards. It could eventually be built into the member portal, which is mostly for Eden members right now. I don't know how easy it would be to allow EOS versus Eden members to interact with things on that website. Maybe it's easier than it seems. The Clarion team already has a roadmap. They're open to feedback and suggestions of what to prioritize on the roadmap. So if that was something that we
Mhm.
thought would really, really help, maybe they'd be interested in building it into the member portal sooner than later. But the idea of it being publicly available and EOS community members who are not Eden members being able to vote on it would be great for them, for even if they can add things as well, and then Eden members would have a better
Sure.
sense of what the community cares about the most.
Yeah, and I don't know.
Yeah.
I like forcing people, not forcing, but encouraging people to become an Eden member. Like if you're an EOS community member who cares enough about wanting to take the time to vote on and put up proposals on another site, then why not take the time to just join Eden? And I get there's the whole picture video sensitive folks, and maybe we just open ourselves up to a layer of members who, even if they just can't even vote, but at least enter membership enough to then play on this board that you're talking about. Like at least get them into the tent a little bit,
I guess the
well, like if we
main thing is
use
logging in
some,
with an EOS account of some kind. Go ahead, Dom.
yeah, which I'm sure the Clarion team could do in the portal if we do it that way. But if we really use one of these free tools, like even Trello, Asana, they have options where, you leave, we create a special project for this. For example, if you do it in Asana, and we just make it public designation, and then anybody could alter stuff, but like, there's version control essentially. They can't just like delete your stuff, but they'd be easily allowed to post their idea of a pitch of something that they, that's what you're getting at, Josh, right? Like where someone from EOS could go, hey, I really think Eden should do this. Somebody from Eden should put some EOS toward this.
Yeah, and I guess Pomelo is going to, we don't have it yet, but that's going to be one way of, and they are probably going to build a feature in there to distinguish Eden members. That'll be one way where the community's telling us what they care about. It'll generally be smaller projects, but even a big project can be broken down into very small projects. But Pomelo is very like focused in a specific way, and maybe we need something that's a little more like simple and general and generic, mostly for the elections, like pre-work for the elections. And in between elections, what does the community really care about? Where should attention be focused, to develop pitch decks and proposals and these kind of things. I hope we do get to a point where it's not just about like we need money for our project, but I hope there becomes like more emphasis on building sustainable business models and value propositions that people actually care about. So that these things can stand on their own and they make their own money. And people, I don't know, it bothers me, like the recent hackathon winner who were saying we're leaving EOS, or we're thinking about leaving EOS because there's just way more funding in Ethereum after they just received funding for winning a hackathon.
Yeah.
It's like, well, can't you use the funds that you have to make this thing work and If it's something that should be funded, then you should be able to prove that people want to use it. You can't just go around getting money all the time and not building something that stands on its own two legs. And maybe it's just me, but I feel like there's a little bit too much of that sentiment in the EOS community, at least from what I can gather, just in the Telegram groups mostly, I guess.
Mhm. And you're saying sentiment around like the fact that people just feel like they can't get funding or support.
Yeah,
And
like
you just feel like there's like a lot of that.
well,
you
they're
know,
using it
I
as a
hear.
crutch or an excuse, and it's like, well, if your idea is
Right.
so great, it should already have a lot of users, and like it doesn't matter if it's
Right.
running on EOS. That's like saying I'm switching from Google Cloud to Amazon because Google Cloud's not funding my business.
Right.
So
Right.
maybe
Yeah.
if I change the back end technology stack, and maybe Amazon's going to fund my business that apparently isn't a sustainable business.
Mhm.
I just don't get the thought process. I understand some things are big and they do need funding to get going, but there should be like a entrepreneurial bootstrap
Yeah.
attitude among people.
Mhm.
I'm
Even
gonna
just
I'm gonna want to see if
I
somebody
go
comes to
ahead.
me with a project for a bigger pot of money, and if I'm running in elections, I'm gonna want to see like, show me how this works on paper. Do you have any evidence in the market already? And if it doesn't
Yeah.
work on paper, if the math doesn't work out for this to be a sustainable business model, and if you have no evidence in the market already, um, you know, is that a project worth funding if it doesn't even look good on paper?
No, and you don't get funding without an MVP. I mean, unfortunately, again, we're still like to some degree, people are caught 4 years ago in. I think one of the worst things that ever happened to crypto was the 2017 ICO craze. It completely just cemented this idea that crypto is a gigantic scam, right? It's like it took, crypto's first exposure was, oh, you buy drugs. That's what it's for. Buying drugs on Silk Road. Great. Then what's the next thing? Oh, it's a big, pyramid scheme essentially where, if you can buy Bitcoin at the right time and sell at the right time, you can get rich. Great. Brought in all those freaking degenerates, and then it was like, oh, no. Crypto's the best way to get your startup funded with nothing but a pretty website and a white paper, which in and of itself is ridiculous because white papers are not, pardon me, fucking business plans. They're scientific. White papers are supposed to be like the Bitcoin white paper is called a white paper because it was a theory. It was Satoshi's theory of money. That's a white paper, not I want to come up with a payment gateway that rivals PayPal. You don't write a white paper on that unless it's some totally brand new like payment consensus mechanism or something, right? Or payment tracking. It's supposed to be a brand new theory or technology that's a white paper. Otherwise, guys, it's a business plan, right? Or something like that. But you're right. You got to create an MVP usually. No one funds you pre-MVP, which I don't necessarily love because not everybody can afford to fully fund their MVP build. But I think at a minimum, we want to be looking at what's the project plan? What's the budget? Do you at least have that written out? Do you really know how much it costs? Or are you just asking for as much as you can get, which is what most new entrepreneurs do, which is completely off. You can't just do that. You can't just say, we need 100 grand. Why? How are you going to expend it? If you haven't written that out already, you shouldn't be asking. A. B, like you're saying, okay, well, talk me through the journey. Like, how does this work? I give you, I allocate 100, K worth of EOS to you. What's next? Right? Have you done anything? Have you even done have you circulated this like market research stuff you can do for free? Have you just asked around, like gotten some polling data or started a thread or, started a Telegram channel, right? Like, the last thing I want Eden to turn into is basically some version of the 2017 ICO easy money for your project bullshit. That's going to get us nowhere. We're just going to have a bunch of people, a deluge of effectively scammers or extremely unqualified business people. I don't think that's going to be good for us. nor is it going to create any value, because much like those projects of 2017, I mean, the failure rate at this point is like pretty much 99%. Like very few projects made it. And you got projects that got 10, 20, 50 million dollars in like less than an hour. You didn't make something out of that? Like, you gotta be kidding me. And I mean, there's people who tried. I'm not talking, obviously there's people who just scammed, right? They took the money and they rolled. Like, there's people who tried to build stuff and still like failed miserably, like never even got to market. It's like, what the like, this is your first time like on earth? Like, how did you not get something built $10 million? Like, at least a shitty app, man. Come on. Like, build something terrible. But no, like, I could see, I don't know what his plan is, but Mel has some idea that involves, and I'm sure you guys all saw this, a website and a dev that can create some sort of EOS wallet integration or something, right? So like, I'm not saying that was more of a commercial idea, which I don't think it is, but let's say it was. Mel's not a developer, but if he had his side of the fence, together, and just needed like a couple grand because he wanted to create the MVP to test, cool. I hope we do that, because I once got told by somebody very wealthy, because I said, I think it's a major problem that you're always expected as an entrepreneur to basically have a rich group of family and friends to go to for your initial funding, or a massive nest egg, or the ability to completely build like, the first version of your product without receiving any funding. I mean, that is incredibly restrictive. The amount of people who, first of all, have friends and family with enough money to fund their startup, two, have enough money on hand to just do it. There should be a way that you get funded at seed, cautious in small amounts, but like, this would be, I think we would unleash a ton of innovative products if we could have like a micro funding seed kind of rhythm out of Eden, where projects get like anywhere from like $2,500 to 10 grand, but enough to either pay a dev or buy, some resources they need, or, stuff like that.
I totally agree with what you're saying. I would go so far as to say, like, I'm not very likely to fund any project that doesn't have some kind of an MVP, because I really know that if you really care about building something, you can build an app, you can do something to show us that you're trying. It doesn't matter if you have a full-time job, it doesn't matter if you don't have any money. There's so much resources available to build something. And hackathons are great to just see who is willing to actually sit down and do it, right? So like, maybe we should eat in hackathons and fund things from those. I don't know.
Yeah, I like your thinking, John. I've been with you. That's been on my list. I think we should do a hackathon, but I think we should do them better, right? Like let's refine that model. Because I'd like them to be like almost like little mini incubators instead of hackathons. Like, bring in, hopefully from within our community, experts of various types, right? From design to ops to finance to, management to, of course, technical, and be able to like, yeah, exactly, like do like a little mini weekend long, hell, even a day long. I mean, if you had 8 hours, let's say it was the three of us, Chris, Josh, and I, have an idea, and we're going to bring it to this little, call it workshop. It's an even 8-hour workshop, and we have to at least submit that we have an idea, something to begin, and show up. And what we can do is basically make appointments from a list of experts, right, that are going to be acting as, mentors. You get a lot done. You do 4 or 5 meetings with different people to get advisement. I mean, imagine being able to grab John and completely talk through the technical plan as to like what's feasible and the different features in the app you think you want to build and blah, 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 right? And talk to somebody about product market fit. Hey, it's what we're thinking about building. What should we be going about doing? What kind of data should we be collecting? How do we So we're teaching and learning too, right? And mentoring, but then imagine the connections and networking we'll all get out of this long term, right? I mean, it'll be incredible. You know, you'll be so introduced to each other's projects, and like I think we'll all be invested too in a way, if not just emotionally, you know, like, hey, I helped Josh and Chris on, you know, and I think we should allow people to come back too. Like have them like once a month or something, but then like you can come back and you can just keep bringing the same project to it. Hopefully you're at a different stage, but like, yeah, I think that would be killer. I've wanted to build a soup to nuts, basically startup program. I've written it all out from basically like the equivalent of a worker proposals system all the way to an IPO and all the different pieces you need along that way. But that would blow EOS mainnet up like mad, right? If all you need to do is come and show up with either basic mockups or a very rough MVP and at least a reasonably thought out plan. And we had all these pieces, incubators, accelerators, crowdfunding, right?
Well, EOS Starter they're saying they want to do like an incubation type program.
Well, yeah, tell us about that, Chris. Like, how are you guys thinking about that?
So, I mean, that's the plan. The plan is to build up a big enough team and a big enough internal team that we can exactly do that. We can take a project idea that's bare bones, doesn't have a full team, could have a full team, but assuming it doesn't, then we could take the idea, work with them, use the internal team, and then spit out a project out the end. But then also allow for, hopefully it has some sort of tokenomics, because that's part of the big token issuance piece, and then the community can buy in to those tokens and go from there. But we're early, like we're still building the team, like we're not there yet to be doing this, right? So it's, you know, it's future talk, and but that's the eventual goal.
Yeah, my biggest issue with EOS Starter is like I felt like there's too much emphasis on like the tokenomics and like pumping a token.
Yeah.
Whereas like I would much rather be I'd be much
I don't know how you're
more
going to do
interested
that
in it.
legally.
Not even, yeah, I mean the legal stuff aside, it just creates a culture, you know, of like this, like Binance Smart Chain, they basically have this culture of copycat dog coins, you know, because
Yeah.
they cultivated that, right? And EOS hasn't had a lot of that spammy stuff get big, which is kind of cool.
Right.
So
Yeah, I'm with you, John. I don't know. Like I'm the chief governance officer, so my thing is I'm focused more on just the governance piece and relating it back to Eden, right, and staying involved with Eden. So
Right.
I don't disagree. Like my overarching intention personally is to see EOS become successful and grow, and then also just spread the seed.
Right.
So if I can make that,
We got to try stuff.
And yeah, it doesn't always have to be a tokenomics project. I don't think personally. I think we could still incubate other projects that just actually are going to deliver something to the ecosystem that don't have a token. But that's sort of the focus for now, anyway.
All right, go ahead, Josh. I just wanted to say just real quick, but what I was talking about there was more like projects would come to this and then go to EOS Starter. Like that's more comprehensive than EOS Starter. I think our little Eden thing that Josh was putting out there would be like just a workshop to get projects ready to do something like that. You know.
So I have a question for the three of you. So if you go to a city like Cleveland, Ohio, or Detroit, Michigan, they have various incubator, accelerator type of co-op workspace environments. Like it's become very popular to have like incubator accelerator programs combined with a co-op workspace environment. And usually it's a venture capital group behind it. So there's one based out of Detroit that's also operates in Cleveland, and maybe they've expanded a little bit more in that area. It's called Bizdom. And I've looked at a lot of these different ones, but I've spent more time, I'm from Michigan, and I spent more time checking out the one in Cleveland. And like I spent some time in the Northeast Ohio area. And what I noticed was, and I've been in other cities and I've researched these things that are out there. And so there's definitely like very big, high profile ones, but in many cases, cities have multiple of these, and they have situations where like you have to be a team and you have to be doing something that's usually like tech based. Like you can't be like creating a hair salon normally. You could do an app for hair salons or something, but you couldn't just be like, I want to get my hair salon funded. And if you have a team, you can pay to go through like a 12-week, a 3-month program. And at the end of that at the end of that program, like an incubator type program, you'll have your pitch together and you probably have an entity set up. You'll have a like value proposition business model. And some of these programs are not really that good from my observations and experience. I've never enrolled in one of them, but I've like witnessed some of their programs and talked to people who've gone through them and stuff. And I can see their curriculum and all of that. There's a lot to be improved upon. And there's probably some
Looks
out
like
there
Wisdom is already out of business.
Oh, really?
Oh,
yeah. Wow. I'm surprised about that. Yeah, maybe they liquidated for something else. But so at the end of that process, like a 3-month process, you would then possibly, if you gave up 8% of the venture, you'd get like around 15,000 in seed funding, which is horrible for 8%, but very common. And I don't even know what you can do with 15,000. Like that's really nothing to shake a stick at for seed funding, especially for a team. But this is very common practice for people to go through a program, and then the promise is there's a strong possibility you'll if you qualify, you'll be able to get some seed funding. And so it maybe in collaboration with incubators like EO Starter, Eden can run these type of programs every business quarter. It could be like an open enrollment, close enrollment kind of thing. And then by the end of that process, those projects would have MVPs and be much more likely to get additional funding. And then on the flip side, like so my question to you guys before I go to on the flip side, what do you think about, like, I know the bylaws haven't been created completely yet, but does it go against any of the Eden ethos for Eden to retain a percentage of a lot of the projects that it funds, so that it can, like, for example, if you look at a nonprofit like Whole Planet from Whole Foods, no, not Whole Planet, they have one where they give micro loans to like minority entrepreneurial women, like in Africa, for example. And so with the microloan, you do have to pay it back, but the money that comes back from the microloans goes to perpetuating, giving out more microloans. So it's like a self-sustaining model.
We just need an entity, because the problem with retaining the equity or anything is, where's it held? You don't want to be as a rep holding it, for example, personally, because that's its own thing.
That wouldn't be good.
And we have no way of holding the project to its side of the agreement if we don't have an entity that we can physically stick that contract with, right? That agreement with. So that's why I'm like really trying to push this with Dan to say, we got to get something up. The DAO could do it alone.
But the model in general, as far as you guys know, doesn't go against like Dan's intentions for Eden.
No, not at all. No.
Because
the idea of Eden is you do whatever with the funds that you think, furthers the mission or vision of that Eden group, right? And those can be different, but obviously Eden Mainnet's mission, right, is to increase the value of EOS, straight up. Like add value to the EOS ecosystem, to expand the use of EOS as a currency, right? Like those are our missions. So of course funding projects would be a big part of that.
So in that case, Eden would operate a little bit more like a venture capital group, or like a hybrid venture capital firm to some degree, venture capital DAO, I don't know. But the incentive, if Eden does get a percentage of a lot of the projects that it funds, there's incentive there to make sure that that project really becomes successful and can stand on its own, because Eden would benefit from it financially, which means more projects would get funded. Maybe that project would also get more funding. there's some, but if that incentive's not built in, then projects could get funded that don't really stand on their own because there's not really any incentive to Eden to make sure that that thing's getting all the support that it needs.
Right.
So
Or
it's just something
we're
I've been
just
thinking
funding,
about.
which is good, but it would be really secondary or almost tertiary benefit to Eden. And that's where I'm like, we should capture that. It's fair. It's fair that if, I mean, because look, it would still be beneficial. Let's say somehow at the end of the day, we come up against compliance or legal issues that just say, listen, where we're at now, you can't fund a project and ask for anything. Let's just say that's where we land somehow. It's obviously still would be beneficial to put some funding in the EOS projects, because ultimately, if they succeed, it's good for EOS and we're all EOS stakeholders. But that's such a secondary, like long way off kind of benefit. I just don't think that serves us to get to what I think is critical, which is financial independence. So long as we are consistently going to be entirely reliant on something like inflation rewards or Block One or some other organization, I'm sorry, I don't think that's success. I don't think that'll be a success. Dan's, censorship resistant, all of that, that's part of it, because all it takes is one vote from the block producers 1 year to go, nope. And what, we're done? I mean, ridiculous. I don't want to be a part of that. I'm not going to put my life into building a group like that. They could just be turned off at a whim. No. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'll piss people off all day long. I don't care. At least what I'm doing is sustainable. Granted, you could say, oh, well, we're reliant on your initiative. No, not really. If I stop doing it, someone else just replaces me like that. It's basically a business model I'm creating here that anybody could just replace me if I decided to be a douche about it, right? So it's still recurring to me and sustainable for us. You're not dependent on me, right? Eden's not depending on Dom and block time to do this. I'm just kind of setting the first example.
This is all the more reason why Eden needs to pick the BPs, right? We gotta, if we have more stake, we get a beefy proxy, then we can have a lot more security in our ability to self fund, because we have a lot more weight. What do you think, Josh?
Yeah.
Well, you've seen some of my thoughts about it.
But I still
300 million votes,
I
and it's in
still
the
like
bag.
the idea of even constantly having to rely on inflation. I just think it'd be better if we could do it without it, obviously, right? We'd be adding that much more value if we don't have to recycle, the created value of the token over and over and over again. Instead, we've transformed that token into profitable growing assets as a foundation. We have an endowment, right? That's where the VC would come in. I would love to see, this EOS Foundation hold equity tokens, whatever, in 100 different EOS startups, right? That's eventually going to be worth a lot. There's your funding. We don't have to keep going.
Is there anything going on with the EOS Alliance there, or EOS Foundation, or whatever? I know that was heard something coming, maybe.
Not that I'm aware of.
Nothing really come of that, eh? No.
Well, did you guys see the old post that Randall put in the Eden members group from like March? Dan was kind of giving out like, I mean, the timeline has shifted a lot, but like the line of logic of at what point it was basically Dan, the Clarion team, and the EOS Alliance would approach the BPs to release the RAM fees, and they would hold some of that, which I guess is reimbursement for Dan. Like EOS Alliance would hold that until the job is done, and then they would also release these funds to reimburse Dan and the Clarion team. But there was other things too besides that. There's kind of like this benchmark, like milestones, and we haven't hit those yet. But it's, as far as I know, aside from the timeline changing, it's still part of the plan. The plan hasn't really changed in terms of
Yeah.
we do our first
I think
election with 1,000 people, and that's the point when
Right.
start asking for the RAM fees.
Okay, real quick, let me just do this.